Hello there and welcome to my latest podcast. Did you hear the one about the aircraft returning from Zante with confirmed cases of coronavirus and with the aircraft passengers being told that they must now self-isolate? What was remarkable about this story is that it happened on Tuesday the 25th of August and the actual news only broke the story on Sunday the 30th of August, some 5 days later. 5 days. That's what it took to reveal the seriousness of this story and its impact on passengers arriving into Cardiff. That's 5 days for the passengers to get back to their homes and potentially mix with friends and neighbours before they were told that they should isolate. So it's not just about 193 passengers, it's likely to be much more. Then there's the issue that COVID flight safe rules were not followed. Passengers from the jet claim that people were not wearing their masks and were mixing throughout the cabin. The airline hotly refutes the passenger comments, advising that the rules were followed. If the allegations are indeed correct, then it raises important questions as to why the powers under Section 94 of the Civil Aviation Act 1982 were not used. If passengers are failing to respond to crew safety instructions, then action can be taken to either restrain a passenger or passengers for the attention of the authorities upon landing. Where the situation on board becomes unsafe, the captain has the option of bringing the aircraft down and disembarking the unruly passengers, with the airline providing them with the bill for the flight disruption. What is interesting here is that it seems that none of these measures were deployed, and looking at UK and EU regulation, it appears to take the form of guidance. That is why the powers given to aircrew is so important. It is one thing to placate passengers, but quite another to allow passengers to continue to flout the rules. It's also important to note that this particular airline is a signatory to the EU EASA Aviation Industry Charter for COVID-19, which points the signatories to the EASA ECDC COVID-19 Aviation Health Safety Protocol. Now, that protocol references the actions that aircrew should take or consider where passengers are disruptive toward the COVID safety measures. Now, it's been said that the airline is carrying out an inquiry into the allegations, but surely this should be an independent inquiry led by the Civil Aviation Authority, along with the Department of Health and the Department of Transport. Do you get the sense that there is very little follow-up in these issues? That there is no confidence-building mechanisms from which the public health awareness, the travel industry and the consumer would benefit from? Then there is the question of where did the passengers with the confirmed cases of coronavirus contract the illness? Was it in the UK or was it in Greece? I suspect that those affected probably arrived in Greece before the 17th of August requirement to produce a negative COVID PSR test before being allowed to enter the country. It is going to be the case, in my opinion, that countries will no longer take your word for it. You have to prove that you do not have coronavirus before they will let you in. So we have the prospect that travellers to Greece on this flight were likely to be asymptomatic or indeed pre-symptomatic, but how would we know? Were any of these passengers tested before or post-departure? We know that the answer here that they were likely not tested before going on holiday if the departure was pre-17th of August 2020. But if they were tested in Greece and found it to be asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic, what did the authorities do? What did the UK's Foreign Office do to ensure that risk was kept to a minimum? One thing's for sure, the confirmed cases caught it somewhere, but the question of where will, for the moment, remain a mystery. Now, as I wrote the script for this podcast, the prospect was arising that Portugal would be added onto the no-go and quarantine list due to the increasing R number in that country. And now let's leave to one side our own increasing R number, which I'm certain countries will soon start to raise their own concerns quite soon. In the early stages of this crisis, we could see in minute detail where geographically the greatest risk arose by reference to the R number. We now seem to have migrated to the R number being set against the per 100,000 members of population as being the indicative risk in a country. But can that unified figure be said to be the most accurate measure of what is happening in any country? What is the true position of a region, a town or a village? What is the measure that should be deployed to understand the nature and rates of infections? It must be clear that using the blunt instrument of closure, because it's easy, does not really advise of risk or the nature of that risk. Risk comes from who we are, where we have been in our communities, and how that risk is recognised and confirmed. There is much consternation about all of this from the travel industry, who are already reeling from the effects of competition and, of course, the potential from a no-deal Brexit. And then COVID hit town. Over the weekend, one senior leading light in travel raised the pointlessness of quarantine on its own as a weapon against COVID. They raised the prospect that quarantine was a breach of human rights, and that's a fair point. But the problem with that argument is that a state can derogate or indeed suspend a country from those rights in times of a national emergency. To derogate, a country has to inform the keepers of the treaties or conventions that the country has signed up to that they intend to derogate from those rights, whilst providing evidence of the steps that they intend to take to protect the rights of individuals. Now, this is an important point because whatever about our rights as individuals, businesses also have human rights, as set out, for example, in the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. Article 16, for example, gives the freedom to a business to operate according to national and EU law. Now, before anybody gets vexated about my reference to the EU and the UK, everyone should remember that Articles 126 and 127 of the Withdrawal Agreement continues those rights that we had upon formally leaving the EU until the 31st of December 2020. And individuals and businesses can rely on those rights certainly until then, whatever about beyond that date. Now, it seems to me, given that the decisions that are being made unilaterally by government, or with the intent of keeping us safe, that those decisions should be capable of challenge. I would say that they can be challenged, simply because I can find no evidence that the UK has derogated from its treaty obligations to human rights, be they for businesses or individuals. There is evidence that a High Court judge submitted a derogation in his case because he considered that it was not possible to deal with the human rights issues in the case, given the emergency, unless he did otherwise. Now, that was in March of this year, and the government did not follow suit. So if I were in the delegation meeting with MPs and ministers today, I would be raising this issue of derogation today to bring about pressure. Of course, the government could derogate there and then, but it's unlikely at this point. The travel industry could, with unity and authority, drive the forces of policy towards testing, geolocating R numbers, and better and enforceable regulation, thereby bringing about a better and more informed dialogue on the potential of travel. It would also, I suspect, if governments embrace multilateralism, bring about a better policy across Europe and heighten consumer awareness of the risks apparent. As it is, much to the seeming shock-horror delight of the red-top newspapers, we are engaged in a game of holiday hokey-cokey, and an industry facing the plunging numbers on their balance sheets. Cool heads and analytical minds are required. Until the next time, take care.
Da da dum da dum da da dum da dum da da dum da dum da da